Imagine the year is 1937. The world is holding its breath. In the secretive factories of the Soviet Union, engineers are working feverishly. They are not just building weapons, they are trying to rewrite the laws of physics. We all know the legends, the T-34, the Tiger, the Sherman, machines that defined the Second World War. But before the war truly began, there was a period of absolute madness. A time when Soviet designers looked at a tank and asked, why should it just drive? Why can't it fly? Why can't it swim underwater? Or better yet, why can't it jump? Yes, you heard that right, jumping. Look at this machine. It looks like a fever dream. A metal box designed not just to crush the enemy, but to literally leap over the trenches that killed millions in the previous war. This is the story of the TPP-2, the Obstacle Overcoming Tank, a project so ambitious, so strange, and so desperate that it has been almost forgotten by history. Until now. Today, we are going deep into the archives. We are going to look under the armor of the weirdest Soviet prototype of the 1930s. Was it a stroke of genius? Or was it a death trap for its crew? Let's find out. To understand this machine, we have to understand the fear. Go back to the mindset of the 1930s. Military commanders all over the world were terrified of one thing: the trenches. World War I had scarred a generation. It was a stalemate. Millions of men dying for a few inches of mud, barbed wire, craters, fortifications that no wheel could cross. The Soviet Union, preparing for the next big war, was obsessed with deep battle theory. They needed speed. They needed to break the enemy line and keep moving. They couldn't afford to get stuck in the mud. This created a golden age of weird tanks. You had the T-35, a land battleship with 5 turrets. You had the flying tank projects, literally tanks with glider wings strapped to them. And then you had the obsession with mobility. The engineers were told, make a tank that cannot be stopped. And when a Soviet engineer in 1937 was given an order, failure was not an option. Failure meant a visit from the secret police. So, they got creative. Extremely creative. They looked at the standard tanks of the day, the T-26 light tank. It was reliable. It was decent. But it had a problem. If it hit a wide anti-tank ditch or a dragon's tooth fortification, it was stuck. It was a sitting duck. So, the designers at the Spetsmash-Trust, the Special Machine Trust, came up with a radical idea. What if the tank didn't have to roll through the hole? What if it could launch itself over it? Now, when we say jumping tank, Americans usually think of the BT series, the BT-7. You've seen the footage. Those fast tanks hitting a ramp at 40 miles per hour and flying through the air like a rally car. That was kinetic energy. That was speed. But the project we are talking about today, the TPP-2, was different. This wasn't about speed. This was about mechanics. The designers realized that speed was dangerous. If you jump a tank at 40 miles per hour, you break the suspension, you concuss the crew, you might even blow up your own ammunition. They needed a tank that could approach a trench slowly, methodically, and then lurch over it. Enter the TPP-2. Based on the chassis of the T-26, it looked innocent enough from a distance. But look closer at the tracks. Look at the wheels. This wasn't a normal suspension. This was an engineering nightmare. The concept was called the Active Obstacle Overcoming System. Here is the technical breakdown, simplified. Imagine a wheel that isn't centered. An eccentric wheel. When you rotate it, It pushes down hard at a specific point in the rotation. The idea was to create a surge of energy, a kick. The TPP-2 was equipped with a specialized transmission and a modified running gear. The driver would approach a trench. He would engage a specific gear. The internal mechanism would build up tension and then release it into the track rollers in a violent burst. The tank would literally buck like a wild horse. The front end would be thrown upward and forward, theoretically clearing the gap. Then, the rear would follow. It was less of a graceful jump and more of a violent spasm. Let's look at the visuals. The image you see on the screen captures the essence of this era. Riveted armor, boxy shapes, the aesthetics of pure function over form. The TPP-2 weighed roughly 9 or 10 tons. It was armed with a 45mm cannon and a machine gun, standard for the time. But inside, it was cramped. Imagine being the driver. You are sitting next to a transmission that is designed to explode with torque. You are surrounded by levers that control this jumping mechanism. The armor was thin, only about 15 millimeters. It could stop small arms fire, but an anti-tank rifle would punch right through it. But protection didn't matter if you couldn't move. Mobility was life. The prototype was built around 1937. This was the peak of the Great Purge in the Soviet Union. The pressure was immense. The engineers knew that if this jumping concept worked, they would be heroes. They would revolutionize warfare. No trench could stop the Red Army. But there is a reason you don't see jumping tanks today. Let's talk about physics, the enemy that never sleeps. When you throw a 10-ton metal box into the air, even just a few feet, it has to land. Gravity is cruel. In testing, the TPP-2 faced a catastrophic problem: the landing. The suspension of a T-26 was designed for driving, not falling. Every time the tank jumped or lurched over an obstacle, the impact shattered the road wheels. It snapped the tracks. And the crew? There were no seatbelts, no airbags, just steel walls. Every jump was a concussion waiting to happen. The gunner would smash his head against the sight. The loader would be thrown against the ammo rack. The report from the testing grounds was brutal. The mechanism is too complex. The wear on parts is excessive. The combat effectiveness is doubtful. So, what happened to it? Like many projects of the 1930s, the TPP-2 vanished. It was deemed a failure. The complexity of the eccentric wheels was just too much for mass production. You have to remember, Soviet doctrine required tanks that could be built by unskilled workers in tractor factories. The TPP-2 was a watchmaker's tank. It needed precise tuning. In the mud of the Eastern Front, it would have broken down in an hour. But the story doesn't end with the scrap metal. Because this tank represents something beautiful and tragic about human ingenuity. It represents the moment before the reality of war set in. In 1937, engineers could still dream of sci-fi solutions: jumping tanks, hovercrafts, electric guns. By 1941, when the German invasion began, those dreams were crushed. The Soviet Union didn't need a tank that could jump. They needed a tank that could survive. They needed the T-34. Simple. Sloped armor. Diesel engine. No gimmicks. Just cold, hard efficiency. The TPP-2 was the last breath of a dying era of experimentation. It was a dinosaur before it was even born. But look at the image again. Sometimes, in the chaos of war, these old ghosts would reappear. During the defense of Odessa in 1941, when the Soviets ran out of real tanks, they took tractors, simple agricultural tractors, and welded ship steel onto them. They put fake guns on them to scare the Germans. They called them NI tanks, Na Ispug, literally translated as for terror or to scare. They looked a lot like our jumping tank. Boxy, crude, improvised. It's ironic, isn't it? The high-tech jumping tank of 1937 failed. But the improvised tractor tanks of 1941, built out of sheer desperation, actually fought. They didn't jump trenches. They just rumbled forward, driven by men who had no other choice. Why does this matter to us today? Why should we care about a failed prototype from 80 years ago? Because the TPP-2 teaches us about the evolution of technology. Innovation is not a straight line. It is a messy path full of dead ends. For every T-34 that changes the world, there are 100 TPP-2s that failed. There are 100 engineers whose names we will never know, who stayed up late at night, drawing blueprints for a machine that would leap over the battlefield. They pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They learned that you can't cheat physics. But they also paved the way for active suspension systems we use today. Modern main battle tanks can stabilize their guns while moving at full speed over rough terrain. They don't jump, but they glide. That technology stands on the shoulders of these crazy early experiments. The American audience knows the Sherman. The British know the Churchill. But the TPP-2 is a glimpse into the Soviet mind. The willingness to try the impossible. The willingness to build a machine that looks absolutely insane, just on the chance that it might work. So, the next time you see a documentary about World War II and you see the columns of T-34s rolling toward Berlin, remember the TPP-2. Remember the jumping tank. Remember the boxy little monster that tried to defy gravity. It was a failure. It was dangerous. It was mad. But it was also magnificent. It was a testament to the fact that even in the darkest times, human imagination tries to find a way to fly. Or in this case, to jump. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the obscure history of Soviet armor, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And tell me in the comments below, would you have been brave enough to be the driver of the TPP-2? I think I'll stick to the history books. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.